Carlos Alcaraz is no stranger to pressure. On the court, his brilliance continues to light up the sport. A U.S. Open triumph, a fierce showing at the Laver Cup, and another crown at the ATP 500 in Tokyo. But just as quickly as he stacked trophies, he sparked controversy. His decision to withdraw from the Shanghai Masters 1000, citing the relentless demands of the tennis calendar, triggered a wave of debate. The Spaniard justified his absence with a simple message: too much tennis, too little recovery. For a 21-year-old already playing with the aura of a legend, it was a line in the sand, a call for reform. But not everyone agreed. Some fans understood. Others accused him of ducking responsibility. Then came the fiercest blow, from Rennae Stubbs, former world number 1 in doubles and now one of the most respected analysts in the game. Her criticism was blunt, aimed not at Alcaraz's talent but at his credibility. "I find it funny," she said, "because as much as I appreciate Carlos, I've seen him signed up for almost every exhibition in December, from New Jersey to Miami to Saudi Arabia. How can you complain about the official calendar and still fill your schedule with private million-dollar commitments?" Her words cut deep because they exposed a contradiction. At the very moment Alcaraz was calling for fewer demands, he was also preparing to take part in the Six Kings Slam in Riyadh, an exhibition loaded with luxury, spectacle, and a $6 million prize for the winner. It's a competition without ATP points, but with travel, training, and intensity that mirrors an official tournament. Exactly the kind of extra burden he had just condemned. The criticism reframed the debate. Was Alcaraz truly defending player welfare, or simply choosing between obligations and opportunities? His defenders argued he has every right to balance business and health, especially at his age. His critics, however, warned that his message loses impact if actions don't align. At stake is not only Alcaraz's reputation but also the wider struggle between tennis as business and tennis as survival. Every move by the Spaniard now transcends the scoreboard. Titles, withdrawals, and exhibitions alike fuel a narrative that stretches beyond sport. The tug-of-war between spectacle, money, and the physical toll of elite competition. The backlash is only beginning. We dive into the Saudi spectacle, the Six Kings Slam, and how Djokovic added fuel to the fire. Stay tuned to World News Tennis for the inside story. The storm around Carlos Alcaraz intensified when his next destination was revealed: Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. From October 15th to 18th, the capital would host the Six Kings Slam, the richest exhibition event in world tennis. Funded by the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund and wrapped into the Riyadh Season Festival, the tournament promised fireworks. 6 of the sport's brightest stars battling for a staggering $6 million winner's prize, with each participant guaranteed at least $1 million simply for showing up. Alcaraz was set to return, this time alongside Jannik Sinner, the Italian champion of the first edition, Novak Djokovic, Alexander Zverev, Jack Draper, and Taylor Fritz. Missing were Rafa Nadal, Holger Rune, and Daniil Medvedev, who had joined the Spaniard and Djokovic in the inaugural lineup. For fans, it was another chance to see the future and the past of tennis collide under the desert lights. For critics, it was Exhibit A in the case against Alcaraz's credibility. The optics were impossible to ignore. On one hand, Alcaraz had withdrawn from Shanghai, citing exhaustion and the unsustainable ATP calendar. On the other, he was willingly committing to high-paying exhibitions in far-off locations. The contradiction was the perfect opening for Djokovic to add his voice. The Serbian, never shy about defending his beliefs, echoed Stubbs's charge but sharpened it further. "We complain, but we don't invest the necessary time and effort to change things," Djokovic declared. "I see players talking about obligations tied to financial bonuses. At the same time, they sign up for countless exhibitions. It's contradictory. Talking in press conferences is not enough. If you want change, you need unity, sacrifice, and commitment." Coming from Djokovic, the words carried weight. This was a man who had fought to organize players into stronger unions, who had been criticized for challenging tennis's governance, and who had endured decades of travel under the same brutal schedule. His dart was aimed not only at Alcaraz but at the entire younger generation. Talented, ambitious, but unwilling to endure the political battle required to reshape the sport. For Alcaraz, the double-front attack, from a respected legend like Stubbs and from Djokovic himself, was a reminder of the microscope he lives under. At 21, he is not only judged on his game but on his choices, his voice, and his contradictions. His decision to play in Riyadh fed the narrative that he was trying to have it both ways. condemning the system while profiting from alternatives that mimic its very demands. The controversy raised the bigger question: where does the circuit's responsibility end, and where does the players begin? The ATP may dictate mandatory events, but exhibitions are personal choices. Should a star who speaks of protecting his body refuse them, even when millions are at stake? Or is it hypocrisy to demand rest from official tournaments while chasing money in private showcases? For now, the answers are as divided as the headlines. But one thing is certain: the Saudi event magnified the contradictions and ensured that Alcaraz's every move would be scrutinized far beyond the white lines of the court. After days of criticism, Carlos Alcaraz finally spoke. His withdrawal from the Shanghai Masters 1000 had already disappointed thousands of fans, but the accusations of hypocrisy, fueled by Rennae Stubbs and sharpened by Novak Djokovic, demanded an answer. And Alcaraz did not hide. His defense was simple yet resolute: health is non-negotiable. The Spaniard explained that after a season crammed with mandatory tournaments, his body was close to its limit. Continuing without rest, he warned, would risk not only his performance but his career. "This wasn't a decision I made lightly," he said. "If I want to keep fighting for Grand Slams, I have to be strategic. Playing endlessly without breaks will sooner or later lead to serious problems." But Alcaraz's argument went beyond muscles and joints. He addressed the mental toll of elite tennis: constant travel, constant pressure, constant competition. "Competing week after week without time to disconnect is one of the greatest challenges of our life as players," he explained. "It's not just the body, it's the mind. Protecting both is essential if I want to stay at the top for years." To his critics, the words rang as justification. To his supporters, they sounded like courage. After all, few stars dare to openly admit vulnerability in a sport that rewards endurance and punishes withdrawal. His declaration reframed the debate. It was not about avoiding pressure, but about longevity. Interestingly, his stance drew support from other corners of the sport. Iga Swiatek, the WTA #1, had long criticized the ever-expanding calendar, describing it as a system that forces players to choose between health and obligation. Alcaraz publicly aligned with her, stressing that many top athletes face the same impossible balance. And then came an unexpected ally: Jannik Sinner. After his win in Beijing, Sinner was asked about Alcaraz's decision. Instead of distancing himself, he acknowledged the Spaniard's point. "Sometimes it's unavoidable," he admitted. "When tournaments are extended, the calendar becomes almost unmanageable. I've skipped events too, because it was the best for my body and mind." Sinner even reflected on his own learning curve. "At 22 or 23, he explained, you are still figuring out how to manage a season. The pressure to play every event can be overwhelming, which is why having a strong team is crucial. You can always choose," he said, "and sometimes skipping is the smartest choice." His words softened the image of Alcaraz as a lone rebel and reframed him as part of a growing chorus of caution. Suddenly, the debate wasn't just Carlos versus the critics. It was Carlos, Iga, and now Sinner pointing to the same truth: tennis players are not machines. Yet the backlash remained. Fans and analysts continued to question whether Alcaraz could have sent the same message without accepting exhibitions. Others insisted that if he truly believes in reform, he must set the example, even when millions are on the table. Still, Alcaraz's reply revealed his philosophy: prioritize recovery now, to fight harder later. A gamble, yes, but one that could extend his reign rather than shorten it. The storm surrounding Carlos Alcaraz was no longer about a single withdrawal. It had become a symbol of the crossroads tennis now faces. On one side, the institutions, ATP, ITF, organizers, who stretch the calendar to maximize prestige and profit. On the other, the players, whose bodies and minds are the engines of the sport but who often lack a united voice. Alcaraz's decision to skip Shanghai crystallized that tension. His statement, "Too many mandatory tournaments, too little freedom," resonated not only with his fans but with a growing number of insiders. Every taped knee, every timeout, every retirement across the tour became evidence in the trial against the system. The numbers are ruthless. Masters 1000 events now span almost 2 weeks. Grand Slams demand 3 consecutive best-of-5 matches just to reach a second week. Add the travel between continents, exhibitions, and national commitments like Davis Cup, and the load becomes brutal. For every Federer or Nadal who extended careers into their 30s, Dozens of talents vanished before reaching their full potential. Stress fractures, torn ligaments, recurring injuries. Signs of a machine devouring its own stars. And that is the paradox. More matches mean more revenue, for organizers, broadcasters, sponsors, and yes, even players. But at what cost? The very spectacle fans pay to watch risks being diluted by fatigue and burnout. The clash of voices painted three distinct paths forward. Alcaraz, the rebel, calling for freedom, balance, and reform, even if it means breaking tradition. Sinner, the pragmatist, careful and strategic, choosing silence when necessary but acknowledging limits privately. Djokovic, the veteran, demanding not just words but action, warning the younger generation that change requires sacrifice and unity. This triangle of perspectives revealed a deeper truth. The future of tennis will not be shaped only on the court. It will be decided in boardrooms, negotiations, and collective action, or lack thereof. For now, the institutions hold the upper hand. Few players dare to openly support reform. Silence preserves peace. But silence is also complicity. If Alcaraz dares to follow through and skip mandatory tournaments, he could trigger a chain reaction, or he could stand alone, punished by fines, stripped of points, and criticized as reckless. What's clear is that the debate will not vanish. Whether whispered in locker rooms or shouted in press conferences, the question remains: who controls the rhythm of tennis, the organizers or the players who bring it to life? Shanghai, in this context, became more than a tournament. It was a referendum, not only about who would lift the trophy, but about who would endure, who would resist, and who would shape the next decade of the sport. For Carlos Alcaraz, the message was clear: trophies shine, but health sustains. For his critics, the contradiction was clear: actions must match words. And for tennis, the lesson was unavoidable. Without reform, the cracks will only widen. The battle is only beginning. Will Alcaraz be remembered as the reckless star who fought a losing war, or the pioneer who forced tennis to change? Stay with us on World News Tennis for the stories beyond the score, where legends are forged not just in rallies, but in revolutions.